Welcome, welcome, you guys. I'm so excited to have you today on the podcast. And I am so excited that we have Paula as our guest today. How are you, Paula?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you, Eden. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. For those that don't know you yet, would you mind giving us a little introduction on yourself and what you do?
Definitely. Hi, Eden's family. My name is Paula. I'm a personal branding strategist and just all-round women empowerment advocate. Like my job every day is to make sure that the women I work with are showing up in their full power, talking about what they love to talk about, contributing what they really want to contribute to the world. So that's basically what I do. I help women find their voice, use their voice, and position themselves in the global market.
Oh my gosh,
I have a
obsessed.
podcast. Yeah. I'm a podcast host as well, for She's the Brand podcast. And yeah, that's about it.
Amazing. Okay, so how did you get started in all of this? Like, when did you start? How did you get started? What did that all look like?
All right, so funny story, right? I was in law school a few years ago, and well, I was already married, right? But the day to my law school exams, I found out I was pregnant. So by the time I was called to the Nigerian bar, I was like 6 months pregnant. So I already knew that the typical, law career that I thought I was going to have was going to be shaky. So I was home with my baby and trying to figure life out, and then the pandemic hit. So there was now the lockdown. So it was like the law career that never started, but that was all I thought I was going to be. So during the pandemic, I just started dabbling in like digital marketing, and I had been on like a personal development journey, just self-development, getting to know myself outside of like family and all of that. So I thought I would start a YouTube channel to just share what I was learning, right? And the skills that I got from having to figure out the YouTube channel now became how I was making an income during the pandemic. So the personal development combined with the marketing just kind of evolved a lot of pivots into like personal branding. When I had female clients who wanted to brand themselves, not their businesses, I realized that was where I really lit up. That was where I got really excited. So I just pivoted until it became a full-blown personal branding movement.
Wow. Okay, that is quite the story. I'm like, that is wild to start like beginning a law career and then like having a baby and then going straight into lockdown. I'm like, that's so many changes all at once.
Yeah.
Where did you kind of start with the learning? Like, I'm assuming you're self-taught. So like, where did you kind of start learning? Like, was it online? What did that look like?
It was definitely online. The first thing I had to learn was how to edit a YouTube video. So that was one of my first skills. I've always been like a reading and writing person, just on a personal note. So I already kind of understood the writing part. But the first skill I picked up on this journey was the video editing and then the picture editing because I then had to move to Instagram to like let people know, oh, I have a YouTube channel. And so I picked up social media marketing skills over there. And then that's majority of it. Communication is like the biggest part of branding. So I already had the skills. I just applied it to a different place. Yeah. So picture editing, video editing, social media marketing in that order.
That's amazing. Did you find that there were certain resources that were more valuable than others? Like there's so much education online right now. Like how did you kind of discern where to learn those skills?
To be honest, I realized that it wasn't about the what I was learning from others as much as what I implemented and created by myself.
Mm.
So I took a lot of classes. I started like 5 years ago. So this was like 2019, 2020. I took a lot of classes, attended a lot of, took a lot of courses, but they were pretty much the same thing, right? I always say that the strategies are, all of them work. Most of the strategies out there work. So what I had to do was then find how to work, make it work for myself and my situation. And in turn, because now the clients that I attract are those that have been, are where I used to be. So I had to find my own framework. So I learned that everybody that was teaching Instagram taught it well. Everybody that was teaching email marketing taught it well. So all of the from the YouTube videos to the courses to the ebooks, You know how freebies go and even the paid courses. So it just taught me that you could learn from everybody, but you have to sit with yourself and just create your own framework and find what worked for you. So you a lot of experimenting and then find what works and then that becomes your own framework that you will help your clients with.
I love that. I think like we don't talk about experimenting enough and that like it takes a lot of trial and error, like literal error, and you have to bounce back
Yeah.
from it in order to identify what's going to work for you. Talk to me a little bit about what that looks like for you and your business. Like when you start teaching someone about implementation, about showing up, about branding, where do you kind of start with that? What does the beginning process look like for you?
Thanks. That's a great question. The first step is usually what do you want to be known for? Like, what is the silly dream you had as a child? What do you have right now? And where do you want to get, right? Because branding is a process and it's a process of getting you from where you want to be, from where you are to where you want to be. And it has a lot to do with the associations you make, the people you will meet on the way, who you're trying to be, what you're going to put out. So you have to know, first of all, what you have, what you're going to use to get there and then where you're trying to get. So we start with where are you right now? Where are you trying to get? When we clarify that, a lot of clarity sessions around there, then we know what route to take. Then we know what platform is the best for you. Then we know how to craft your messaging and we know because we now know who you're trying to talk to and who what you're trying to do in the world. But it starts with where you're trying to get.
How do you find that? Like, what if you don't know where you're trying to get?
Oh, that's fine. Everybody has like a childhood dream. You know,
Mhm.
I have two boys right now. One is 6, one is 3. And my 6-year-old, I ask them regularly, right, what do you want to be? And he wants to be a policeman and he wants to own a hotel business. That's so specific. It's so specific, but there's a
So
game we
specific.
play. Not just any business, a hotel business. And I do know that because where I am, we're pretty conservative, right? I mean, you can hardly find a policeman who owns a hotel business, but that's his dream. That's what he wants. So if I've had a client like that who was currently a policeman but would like to own a hotel business, we could would start work with that. It would be okay, so how much time do you have on your hands? How much money do you have to make that happen? Then who do we need to introduce you to? Who do we need to add to your network to make that dream come true? So, but for somebody who doesn't know where she wants to be, there are childhood dreams like that. That's the point I was trying
Mm.
to make. There are people you look at and admire while you may not have thought you could be like that, or, oh, I mean, clearly, I'd like to be like that, there are people who make you happy when you see them. What are they doing?
Mm.
Right? And then in the event you really don't have any of that, what are you doing right now? What makes you happy? So if you work in a department store, but what makes you happy is really coming home to your garden, that might be one way to find what lights you up. So if we're not going to monetize immediately, it would be either we go the route of sharing your life, just your gardening hobby. Let's share that for a start. And then you build the confidence and the capacity to just communicate. So we're not asking people for anything. We're just inviting fellow people that are interested in gardening or just like beginner gardeners. And that could be where you start from. And when you where you start from is hardly ever where you stay. There's a lot of growth, a lot of pivots. Yeah. So
I love that. How do you like I think that's something I notice come up for people a lot is they either don't know where to start. So I love all of that. That's so helpful. And number two is that they're worried about how their brand is going to like grow and expand as they do. Because like obviously we change so much as humans, hopefully. Like we're evolving, we're changing, we're growing. How do you kind of talk people through how their brand can grow and change with them? Like, what does that look like? Because I think it's super intimidating to people. They feel like they create the brand and then it needs to just stay that way when that's not the case.
funny enough, I was thinking about this just today, how much growth happens, right? We don't stay the same. We never stay the same. If you if you stayed in one place and didn't move physically, you would still grow, right? So we cannot stop growth, and your brand must grow with you. If you don't let that happen, you'll have like a misalignment. and then you'll be in a different place mentally. Your brand will still be trying to be in the same place. So growth is inevitable, right? And I always tell people it's possible that the people that follow you, your audience, when you start, might not be your audience in the next 3 to 5 years, and that's okay. The message you start with, because you are going to be on a learning journey as well, you're going to be learning and growing and evolving. Your brand cannot stay in the same place. You cannot even be using the same editing style, for example, because things will have evolved. You cannot be saying the same things because you would have learned some more. And your job really is to become better so that you can be better for your clients, so that you can provide a better service, so that you can provide a better experience all around. And so that because your clients are going to be growing as well, your audience will be growing as well. So if the A to B was what your brand was about at the beginning, and they've learned A to B from you, if you don't figure out how to take them, to E, etc., they're going to have to find somebody else.
Mm.
So refusing to grow is doing yourself a disservice, doing your audience a disservice.
Ooh, I love that idea of like having your audience grow with you, and that if you don't show that growth and you don't show that expansion and you don't grow your brand with you, they have to find someone else that can take them there.
Yeah.
How do you kind of recommend starting to, let me figure out how I want to phrase this. How do you recommend showing your audience the growth that's taking place? Like, do you recommend showing, almost in a past tense where you're like, I just did this work and I just learned this thing? Or do you suggest kind of taking them along the ride with you, like talking about the growth that's currently happening?
So talking about it while it's going on, that's the growth. That's always preferable. But there are some things that you cannot tell while you're growing. So what happens is you're in a situation and you see that you're reacting in a very different way to what you would have done before. And that's when you see, oh, I've grown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, so, but there are other instances where you are deliberate about the growth. You chase the growth. You maybe you took a course, or you got a coach, or you went on an intentional journey about it. For example, I'm currently on a drinking water journey. I'm not a water person, right? But I realized that I need to start being intentional about that. So I have like a spreadsheet and I check mark every day that I drink 2 liters. That's the intentional part. But there are also situations that I find myself where I realize, okay, I must have grown for me to be this calm in this kind of situation. Exactly. So.
How do you recommend keeping your audience up with that? Like, what does that logistically and like tangibly look like?
Oh, okay, okay. That's great. Stories, right?
Mm,
Stories tell a lot of stories. So, first of all, you want to make sure that you're building community around your brand, right? That is, you're expecting that the people on your Instagram are also on your podcast, are also on your email list, like you keep them interconnected, right? But you will move like they're not all in that community, in the sense that you will tell the same story on your stories. I will tell the same story on my stories that I will tell in my emails, that I will tell in my podcast, that I will tell on the feed. I'm going to assume that you're only meeting one of these, meeting me at one of these places. And so I'm going to share the story on all of them. One of the mistakes that I see people make is feeling like people have heard too much of their stories, or they have seen too much of them, or they're talking too much about this thing. But imagine how many pieces of content people have to relate to it in a day. Like they might not watch all 5 of your content points. So yeah, so I tell the stories and I tell them as casually as possible, as real as possible. You guys won't believe what happened to me today, for example. Like I talk to my community, like they're my friends, they're my community, we're growing together literally. So yeah. Not overthinking the story matters as well, because when you put it upon yourself, the pressure to like put together a very well crafted article worthy story, it will stop you from sharing a simple moment that could have been told in 3 to 5 sentences.
mm. I think we get so hung up in everything being perfectly presented that it keeps us from showing up at all. I know I do that all the time where I'm like, I have so many thoughts, I have so many ideas, and I'm like, let me gather them and like perfectly curate them and present them. And then I just end up not even doing it because then it's like too long. It's been ages since it happened, or like what have you. Like there's so many reasons it gets put off in the pursuit of perfection.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
thought you could still tell those stories and be like, I remember when dash 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 happened and this is what I learned. Yeah, and it could even be and I learned not to take too long with my stories. I don't know. You could find.
No, I love that idea. I think that's also like such a good reminder that even if you didn't do it in the moment, there's always an opportunity to share it again. And sometimes those stories are even more powerful because you've had time to like ruminate and sit on it and do the introspection, which I think is really, really beautiful. So there's no like right or wrong way to do it. But obviously coming in and sharing so much of our stories is it feels so personal and it takes a lot of energy and courage and empowerment to do that. I would love to hear about kind of the women's empowerment side of your business and what that means to you as a brand, how you bring it into branding, like what does that kind of look like for you?
Okay, so personally, right, I'm from the conservative part of Nigeria, like I said, and it's not, personal branding is not a big deal around here. As a matter of
Mm,
fact, getting a regular job, getting a 9 to 5 is the expectation. So going outside of that box is already a very big deal. And so you have all of these questions, especially as I didn't even know I was going to succeed in it. I was just really trying. And I didn't know how to explain what I was doing to people. I didn't know how to, it was literally, what is she doing? Right. And so getting to follow your path, to follow what lights you up, is not the first choice around here. So
mm,
my friend and I, we started an organization. It's called Enterprise and Heals, and it's basically a community that just boosts female business owners, right? That just helps them with the resources and the training, and the education, and all of that to get out there. And while you may not have support in family and friends, you will have support in this community and all of that. Because I think we're not so free. And freedom is
mm.
one of my very major values. And I think I worked for my freedom, right? And that is freedom from like societal ideologies. Okay, so my empowerment comes from the fact that I'm able to be doing what I want to be doing right now with the time I have on earth. And that's what I want for the people that I come in contact with. That's what I want for the women I work with. Like, figure out what it is that you really want to use your time on earth to do, and let's help you get doing it.
I think it's so poignant to think of it that way. I think it's super easy to let our jobs just become jobs and like go the day to day and be like working towards something, obviously, but like maybe just getting into the flow of treating work like work. And I think it's so amazing to kind of take that step back and remind yourself that like this is your time on earth, that like could be your only time on earth. And like
Mhm.
how do we want to use that time? Because it's been very like I just moved from New York City and a lot of my friends there work corporate jobs that they just hate. And whenever I'm talking to them, I'm like, this is how you're spending the majority of your life. Like this is your
Yeah.
life on earth that like you're spending doing this thing you really dislike. So I think it's really poignant and powerful to remind ourselves that like we have limited time and that we can be very intentional in the way that we use it. And I think that really shapes the way that we look at our businesses.
I mean, your business is your mission, right? What you're doing with life, yes, is going to bring in an income. And naturally, when you provide value, money follows it. But it's got to be like, it's a mission. It is the part of Earth that you're supposed to be helping, that you're the problem you're supposed to be solving. And if you're not doing it, what you really feel like you should be doing, or fixing what you feel like you should be fixing, then it's time to like take a step back and rethink these things and get over whatever fear is keeping you where you're not supposed to be, and find how to do what you want to do, really want to do.
How do you have like certain questions that you suggest people ask themselves in order to like define that? Or how do you suggest they start defining what they're working towards and what their mission is?
Yeah, there are definitely a few questions you can ask. Questions like, what problem am I solving right now with what I'm doing? Right? And also, whose problem am I solving? Right? You could be working in a job, and the problem you're really solving is your great aunt's problem, who just wants somebody to work in that organization. And when you really sit down and find that out, you'll see that you're not solving your own problem, which might be to travel the world, right? If that is what you really want. And you're not solving your family's problem, which is being a happy person. If you're happy, your family is happy to be around you. And you're not solving, you're not using your gifts or your talents or, whatever to help people. So what you're really doing is helping a corporation make more money,
Mm,
for example. And if that is not a role that lights you up, because for some people, these five using your gifts and talents and whatnot can be done in a corporation, and
mhm.
that's the best place for them to do it. But if that is not you, then these questions should reveal that you're not exactly doing what you want to do, what you love to be doing. And yeah.
No, I love that. I think too, what a like beautiful permission slip that like some people do really thrive in corporate environment. It's like some people do really well there and like that truly does light them up and fuels them. And I don't think I think it's important to talk about how there are no rules for this and there's not necessarily boundaries and there's not a right answer. It's so dependent on like your personal gifts and talents and goals.
Yeah. Yes. People are different, right? Some people, I think, like us, need freedom and just autonomy. Other people need structure, and that's okay. For others, they don't want to be the ones leading or making the rules, or having to run an organization or a company. They just want to get paid when it's time to get paid.
Mhm.
But that could also be so that for them is to find a role that lights you up in an organization that has great culture. So you could still be, mission oriented, just not having to deal with all of the things that business owners have to deal with. So I think freedom also involves the freedom to choose to be in corporate.
I love that. How do you do like any sort of intentional check-ins with your brand to make sure you're staying in alignment or like talk to us about how you kind of correct things when you feel like you're not in alignment with your brand?
When I'm not in alignment with my brand, I find that I'm very restless, I'm very cranky, I'm very reluctant to post
Mm,
because what I'm posting is not exactly how I'm feeling or like where I'm at mentally. So yes, I do. I just take a break and take a few minutes, a few hours, sometimes a few days to be honest, sulk, complain, run around and ignore the problem. But then eventually I sit with myself and realize, okay, what is it that you're trying to hide? What is it that you're refusing to admit? Sometimes it is, I know that it's time to put out an offer, and I'm not ready to go through the process of putting out that kind of offer, right? But it doesn't leave your mind. And when it's time for something, it just keeps ringing in your head.
mm.
So I just try to be honest with myself, but I have to take the time and sit with myself. So I ask myself, what is it that is ringing in your head? What is that thing that's, you know, trying to get out that you're trying to stifle? Sometimes it's a message, sometimes it's a story, sometimes it's an offer. It always just needs honesty on my end. That's usually where I get my block. When I'm trying to ignore something or I'm trying to ignore a prompt, I always hit the wall.
Yeah, I think too it really does take just like sitting still with yourself and like being honest with yourself that something's out of alignment because I think it's so easy to try to push past that and be like, well, it was working for me, so I should just continue with it.
Exactly.
Like that sometimes can be the easier route to like sit in that comfort of
Mhm.
what used to work, even if it's causing you a lot of discomfort internally now.
Very true. Very true. And I mean, we like ease. Nobody really loves discomfort. We just know we have to do it to
Mm,
become the better selves and, all of that. But yeah, that's why there's got to be personal development as you're building your brand so that you become the kind of woman that can face these kind of discomforts. Because your brand cannot grow beyond you, the person that's building the
mm.
brand. So if you are growing as well, you will get to a place where you can face the prospect of the discomfort and still be okay. Put your big girl pants on and
Mm.
do what needs to be done.
No, I love that. If you could give like a singular piece of advice in regards to building your brand or realigning with your brand, like a one message that you would want people to take home from this episode, what would it be?
Trust the process. It has
Mm,
to be trust the process. Like the process, and that is you trying and failing. That is you reading the books, listening to the podcasts, taking the classes and the courses, putting the content out there, even if you're not sure it's perfect. That's the process. That's the process. And I've spoken with many, many business owners, and that's generally the process, right?
mm.
Maybe it fluctuates, maybe differentiates in the podcasts I listen to might not be the ones you listen to. The classes I took may not have been the ones you took. The difficulties I had to overcome that led me to being, in this space with you might not have been the same, will not have been the same with yours. My story will be different from your story, but there was a process that led us to this place. There was a personal development process, there was a professional development process, there was a skill acquisition process. All, and trusting the process means you cannot tell when it's going to end, when the success will come, when the wins will come. But just knowing that if I don't stop, if I keep going, if I don't give up, if I keep investing and implementing and experimenting, I'll get there.
I love that.
That's
No, I think that's like so needed too, to just like have that reminder that there's also not a timeline on the process. Like
mm-mm.
it might take longer than you expect or want. And like that's okay. That's part of the process as well.
That's okay. That's very okay.
Oh, I love that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Paula, for coming on and sharing all of your wisdom. This has been such a beautiful and helpful episode. Obviously, we will link everything to do with you in the show notes, but can you tell us all where we can find you on the internet?
Definitely. My website is paulapwul.com. So it houses like everything. But on Instagram, I'm at paulapwul.co. Pool is PWUL.co. On YouTube as well. And also my podcast, She's the Brand Podcast.
Amazing. Oh, well,
Thank you
thank you
so much for
so
having
much.
me.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on. It was lovely to meet you. It was lovely to have this conversation. So, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was amazing. I love your vibe. I'm definitely going to send you a message after this.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. And thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.